Right, the light has come on. I'm not sure actually the light went off, but so we might start. We'll start a little bit early. So first of all, yeah, you had a question before I started. Yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah. So the question is, if what you happen to come up with in your design turns out not to be as unique as you think it is, will this be seen as plagiarism? And there are two things there. Firstly, definitely not. Okay, definitely not. Plagiarism is taking and passing off as your own something that passing off as something that you did not create. If you have an idea and it turns out that someone else has had that idea, that is not in and of itself plagiarism. Okay? Because you are not making a choice to try and copy someone else. All of us, all of the time, are having ideas that are stimulated by similar thought processes, and we come up with the same expressions of those ideas. The only point at which this becomes a unique idea is when it's patented, when someone identifies it as a unique contribution, right? And it's very unlikely that during the course of this you're going to have one of those, and if you do, then great. But you definitely do not need to be concerned about searching for every possible implementation of a design idea to make sure the claims you're making are true. Okay, so the caveat though is I would expect you to show that you've looked quite broadly around your idea. Yeah, so you say, I have this idea where I'm going to control Facebook via a coffee cup. I would at least expect you to do a little bit of searching in order to identify whether or not that broad area is very well covered. Okay? So you definitely do not need to worry about being sure that absolutely you searched every possible avenue. The second important thing about being creative, and I've said all the way through the process, I want to reward you for your great ideas. And this also relates to plagiarism. What I'm really rewarding you for is the journey to the great idea. Okay? So if you think about how the assessment is structured, it is very explicitly setting out a series of stages. And those stages are the design brief, the development of what you think are the key problems, the design requirements, which was covered last week in the video that I shared with you, refining your design, and then in some sense testing it, although obviously you're not actually going to be producing your design, and then coming to some conclusions. So that's a journey. If you set out for me that journey, and at the end point, what you come up with will be unique to you, right? Because only you have gone on that particular journey. It may be that the combination of technologies, the range of interactions will be similar, could be very similar to something that somebody else has produced. But that journey will be unique to you. Yeah? So if you do the journey, you do the stages that I've set out, there is absolutely no risk whatsoever of me turning around and saying, well, that's not very creative, you've just stolen that idea from someone. Okay? So go on the journey, you'll avoid any sense of plagiarism, and I will reward you for all of the stages. It's like maths, showing your working. Yeah, I want you to show me your design working. That's what the whole assessment is about. Yeah? That's why I keep, in various conversations, I'm saying to you, don't worry about knowing the full breadth of the literature. Don't worry about being able to say, this is how, like I'm talking about 3D modeling stuff. You don't need to be able to say, this is how a laser scan works. You need to be able to say, there are mechanisms that allow us to produce three-dimensional data sets, and these could be used in my design in these ways. That's the level I want you to express, because then all the new ideas come about as a result. Okay? Right, given as we've started talking about assessment, any other hands up for people who have got burning questions about the assessment? Yes. Well, I've changed it slightly from last year. So what I would prefer to say is do exactly what it says in the assignment rubric. Right? You are welcome, if you want to take the assignment rubric, to paste that into your Word document, right, or your Google document, whatever you're using, and have the headings exactly the same, design brief, and set it out exactly as I've proposed in the rubric. That would be fine. And to be honest, that is the best kind of template I could provide. The only other, advice I would have is how you write it. As I've said from the very beginning, be very clear. Don't write long paragraphs. Don't write long, complicated sentences. Use tables, use diagrams, use lists. That's what I want the report to feel and be just a clear communication of your ideas. Yeah? It's not, don't write it like an essay. Okay? If you write it like an essay, then you'll run out of words. Right? You've got these 4,000 words that you're probably thinking, what I want is the breadth of ideas. You're saying, this is a design brief, and that's perhaps the bit that is the most maybe like an essay. You've got a bit about the case studies, that's maybe a little bit like an essay, but really most of it is, here's my idea, this is something else that's been done previously, this is the design process. Yeah? So use the rubric. Right? That's a long way of saying, look at the way I've described the assignment on Pete's and do exactly what I've asked you to do on Pete's. You would be amazed how many people submit assignments to us every year that do not match what we have asked you to do. Okay? So my strong advice is do exactly what we've asked you to do in the brief, and by all means set it out exactly as it is in the assignment brief if you want the same thing. Yeah? Clarity. Tables and so on. That's the main thing. Okay, any other assessment questions? Brill. Right, so today is, and I'm saying, sorry that you had to have sort of recorded versions of last week. As I said, I'll make sure that we will run week 12, which is the catch-up week, which is specifically here for eventualities such as this when I couldn't make it. So you won't miss out in terms of the content. You'll have a bit more. But just remember in your calendars, we will be running this session in week 12 and the seminar session in week 12 too. Last thing about the assignment, the bit about the discussion last week about design requirements is something that should be very useful to you, right? The slides around design requirements set out really clearly what the different methods there are for going about finding out what people want from a particular design. Do what it says in those. Yep. Consider, you can even use the same headings again if you want, but think about how those different methods can be used to elicit the design requirements from your users. And your users could be in this room, again as I've said previously. Use the methods we've tried in class to elicit design requirements, and then think about that journey, like the double diamond, for example. Think about how those methods allow you to start from an idea, expand it to the range of possibilities, the range of problems, cut it down to a specific problem, and then develop solutions to that problem. If you describe it to me in those terms, if you set it out to me in those design requirements, headings, those methods, then it will just be a tickathon, which will make me very happy in January. Okay. Right. So in terms of today, so this is all about ways of generating three-dimensional data and two-dimensional data, some digital methods that we have available to us, that you have available to you, and as usual, one of my examples of how I've done things in cultural heritage, but as usual, these are all applicable to whatever context you want. Product design is making enormous use of all the methods that we're doing today. Performance development, broadcast media, they're all making use of these methods. In the seminar, you will have a go at using one particular one, photogrammetry, that you've hopefully looked at. Just another reminder, I won't in this lecture, I sincerely imagine, get to the last few slides on this, which are very explicitly about Agisoft Photoscan. Have a look, they have details of how you can learn this technology yourself. For your assignment, remember, you can't submit any digital data to me. All you do is submit the report. But if you wanted to, you can experiment with the software and generate whatever, a 3D model of an object that you want to use, or a 3D model of the space that you want to use. There's no requirement at all to do it. If it's helpful for you in the design process, today will enable you to do it practically. Okay, so 3D things. So the journey begins in terms of all of these really. Well, it sort of begins in the 60s in terms of photogrammetry per se, but there's a kind of an important paper in 2000 by HP master inventor, that's the official title, Tom Malsbender, who wrote a report, started writing it in 1999, kind of released it in 2000, which is about shape perception, so capturing shape, so the shape of the surface of a three-dimensional object using a particular method called he defined as reflectance transformation, and a particular algorithm called polynomial texture mapping. Okay, and this suite of methods is now described or understood as reflectance transformation imaging. Okay, so for your purposes, all of today is about how we turn, the real, the tangible, into its digital manifestation, digital surrogate. Okay, and here is the example of that process. You're looking here at the side view of an object, so it has three-dimensionality, and when you shine a light on it, you can tell the shape of the object because of the way the light shines on the surface. Okay? And then, when you've done that, what this diagram is showing is the computer can forget all about the real three-dimensional properties of that object, and instead can represent the three-dimensional object in two dimensions, so as a simple photograph, right? Or using the same data structure. The value of this is that we're really good at communicating with photographs. We're really good at capturing them, we're really good at sharing them on our phones and websites. We have all of the methods already for dealing with photographs. Okay, and you can tell what this is. Yeah, we can all tell what that is on the screen, remember? What is that on the screen? What do we think that is on the screen? It's a coin. How do we know it's a coin? What is it about it that tells us it's a coin, remember? It's not a trick question. Yes. Yeah, there's a head. You can see a head, right? Okay, how can you see the head? Remember? Right, how can you see the head? Does this look anything like a coin that you would pick out of your pocket? No. Okay, it doesn't look like a coin when you have one in your pocket. In a cashless society. It doesn't look like a coin that you have in your pocket because it's not, silvery shiny or bronzy shiny, right? So the appearance is not the same as the plane, but what is the same as the plane? The shape, marvellous, yeah, shape. Enhancement of shape perception by surface reflection and transformation. All of these methods are not about capturing the appearance, they're about capturing the shape. Yep. And we know the shape in this case, because there's a nose pointing out that way, and there's the head pointing that way. And the colour that we're being shown, yeah, remember this colour is expressing the shape. Yeah, the purple bits are telling us this is the shape pointing towards us, the greeny bits are pointing away from us, and the pinky bits are sort of pointing down in that way. Right? So we have converted a three-dimensional object into this shape. And we use a variety of methods for capturing to create these kinds of data. Okay, so including this dome system that I built a few years ago, some other dome systems built by my students in various times or other. And these are all there. There's some more ones built by my colleagues in California. And here is another example built by some experts in Leuven with whom I work. These are all there to convert, to do this process, to convert this three-dimensional object into a flat object. Okay? So all of these processes work by using the term that's there, the photometric method. So today we're going to see two broad sets of methods for capturing three-dimensional data: photometric and photogrammetric. Right? Photometric methods are when the camera, the thing that's creating this digital record, stays in the same place and the light moves. The light moves across the surface of the object. And as the light moves across the surface of the object, as we take more and more photographs, we build up an understanding of the shape of the object. Yeah? So that's photometric. Photogrammetric is where the light is staying in the same place, but the camera is changing. Right? So we're looking from different directions. You've been looking already, hopefully, at photogrammetry and how to study. Okay? So methods like these, so the ones that use these domes, you'll see there's a camera in the fixed position, and the lights turn on and off hundreds and hundreds of times. Yeah, sometimes thousands of times, sometimes hundreds of times a second. So lights change, camera fixed. Photogrammetry, lights fixed, camera changed. Both methods are designed to gain an understanding of the object by looking at how it changes when we change particular parameters. Okay? And they're both really useful as producing these models of objects. There's some other references for you. This is an interactive version. So this is a version used by Tom Malbender 5 years ago. It's in my garage at the moment, actually. I should maybe bring it into work. It's a system of 16 lights, and the lights flash on and off very, very, very quickly, and you hold the object that you want to record inside those lights, and it interactively generates a three-dimensional model of the object for you to use. So it produces that three-dimensional object that you can use in other ways, and it also allows you to do things like applying filters to understand that object. Okay, so I don't know, an example for your installation might be that if you're trying to ask somebody to buy a particularly fine piece of jewellery from you, they would hold the object under here, and it would, on the screen, highlight all of the surface properties interactively with that object that you're holding. It would be capturing the three-dimensional properties of the object and then expressing them on the screen interactively in whatever way you chose. A kind of a subsequent innovation of this technology made use of the shiny ball method, or the reflective spheres method, which is something you can do yourself very easily. All the software here, I should say, is free for you to use. And in this method, instead of having a dome, you make sure that there is a shiny sphere included in every photograph that you take. Okay, so this is a photometric method again. So photometric meaning the light changes, the camera stays fixed. But what we have to include in this scenario is a shiny ball. Why do you think the shiny ball is there? So this process, remember, works by comparing lots of photographs of the same thing under different known conditions. So why would including the shiny ball be useful? What's the shiny ball got on it? What can you see on the shiny ball? Light reflection, yeah. The technical term is a specular highlight. Okay, specular, pointy, sharp, defined, a really sharp highlight, unlike a diffuse highlight, which is sort of, there's probably some sort of more diffuse ones on the walls over there. But okay, so diffuse is spread out, specular, super pointy. So we've got our sphere here. You can see the spiky highlight there. What does that highlight tell us? Tells us the angle of the light, remember? Yeah, okay, tells us the angle of the light. And if we have another one where the highlight is over there, what can you tell? You can tell the light was in a different location. Yeah? There we go. Okay, so by using this method called Highlight RTI, so you can download the software, do it yourself. You take as many photographs as you like with the light in different locations, and you extract a three-dimensional model of the object. So here it's being done with a painting. This is a composite of maybe, I don't know, 30 photographs showing the location of the highlights produced by moving the light around the object. Okay. Some other examples of this in action. So this is a little, it looks like a hat, but this is an example of it being used with a very small point and click camera, and on the right hand side this is an example of using a robotic camera to capture the same data at very high resolutions. So here's an example of the kinds of data that you get. So this is an encaustic painting, so a painting made with wax, coloured wax, from, I think this one is from the 2nd century AD, from near to Alexandria. And on the left-hand side, you've got a conventional photograph, and on the right-hand side, you've got the data captured using this particular method. And these are the data that are generated through this process. So what we've done is remove all of the colour, and just kept the shape. Okay, and this is a very high-resolution data set captured using completely free software. Maybe just, or it's a bit easier to see on the screen. We'll highlight the details a little bit better. Okay, so if you look there. Okay, so that's the earring on this particular data set, and then that's the earring shown in the full resolution that was captured using the camera. Okay, left-hand side without any shape, so just the colour. The right-hand side, the view of this object when you add in the shape. Yep. So you can see it's got shadows, and you can see all of the shape on it. And you can interactively move the light across the surface of this object. So for the purposes of retail, there's been examples of this being used to experiment with how you could sell fabrics, okay, for example. Okay, so in order to understand the particular properties of a fabric, One of them is tactile, the haptic, obviously. And the other one is the way in which the surface of the object interacts with changing light conditions. So if you use this method to generate these kinds of data, rather than having just a static photograph of my scarf, you can have a version of the scarf that will respond to the direction of the light. Yeah? The next stage in a method which is called gonio-reflectometry is where you combine moving the lights with also moving the cameras. And if you do that, then you can take this scarf and you can put the scarf in your bedroom, or you can put it outside on a cloudy day. Yeah? So you can take a digital version of the object and recontextualize it, place it in as if you were placing it in a real context. Yeah, because we know the scarf will look completely different outside from the way it does here. So these methods of capturing the shape and other properties allow us to do those kinds of merging of the real with the virtual. Okay? So increasingly seeing it as a retail opportunity. Okay, so the lesson to learn: photometric methods, camera stays fixed, lights move. Photogrammetry, lights stay fixed, camera moves, yeah. And then the long and convoluted term gonio-reflectometry, lights move and cameras move, right? The third one, the gonio-reflectometry, if you're doing that, the trouble is you end up with a huge amount of data, and so that has its own problematic elements. But that version is the one that's used all of the time in computer graphics and in filmmaking. So a famous example is the Matrix, which used a version of this technology in order to relight all of the actors so they could be filmed in one context and then made to appear as if they were in another context completely. Okay. If any of you for your installations are thinking about that kind of thing, so I know some of you have talked about, imagine if you could go in and simulate buying a particular item of clothing, or I don't know, buying a car, or buying anything where how it looks under particular conditions matters, then being aware of these methods is really useful to you. Yeah. All right, so that's the photometric stereo. Photogrammetry is not so much about producing fine surface details, right? Okay, so the fine surface details that we've captured, as I say, will enable you to look at this in a different way, able to look at it as you shine the light in different directions virtually. You can use the same data, as I've said previously, in order to simulate the sense of touch. So exactly the same data will let you touch the scarf. What it's rubbish at is capturing the three-dimensional data of something more like that. The methods I've described to you so far are very good at capturing subtle detail, so stroking it like a cat. It's quite soft, to be honest. So the subtle surface details, methods I described before, the kind of big details, photogrammetry. Right? Mostly. Alright, so photogrammetry will allow you to create these kinds of things. This happens to be a bit of Roman column, but you know, you can capture anything you like with it. And it can capture things that are very big and very small. So this is very big. So this is a three-dimensional model of the place you've heard about before, Portus, in Italy, captured by my colleague hanging out of a helicopter and taking hundreds of photographs from different angles with the same lighting, because the sun, it was done quite quickly, from different angles in order to produce this three-dimensional record. This one down here, which is one of these, loads of drone photogrammetry being produced. It's kind of probably the most common way of generating 3D models of exterior buildings now. Just send up a drone. And also, so you've seen these photographs in the context of the work I did at Portus. You can use video data to generate three-dimensional models as well. Yeah, so I don't know if your installation is about how could you change, let's say, the Great Court of the British Museum. Right? If you haven't been there, go. It's a beautiful, glorious space. But one way you could capture the experience of people walking around that environment is you wander around it with their permission, if you could get it, wearing wearable cameras. The wearable cameras would capture the first point perspective of a person. Yeah, so you could actually, wander around the British Museum as if you were that person, but also by comparing all of those data sets through time and in space as people move around, and linking together, comparing the data gathered by different people, you'd end up with an extremely high resolution version, a three-dimensional model of the interior of the British Museum. Given enough data, you could also do the other things I described. So you could relight an object or a person in the British Museum courtyard as if it was different times of the day and as if there were different kinds of objects. Okay? So you could, I could put my scarf on and I can walk around the British Museum and you can make it look as if it's first thing in the morning or in the evening or a cloudy day, or if I've changed this scarf and I've put a scarf with a different colour. Okay? We can combine these things together by gathering effectively large amounts of data and comparing and contrasting it. Okay, so just some examples you might want to look at if you're interested in methodology. So these are data sets captured using spherical photogrammetry. So spherical imagery, very common, I think I've mentioned previously. So things like 360 Heroes, which is a way of putting together loads of GoPro cameras, allows you to capture spherical panoramas. There are iPhone attachments, other phone attachments. There are digital SLR attachments that allow you to capture spherical panoramas that give you the sense of being in a place. A second benefit to them is being able to produce photogrammetric models. So you can walk around seeing from a person's perspective in this 3D bubble. In fact, they used to be called bubble worlds back in the mists of time, kind of around the, like late 90s. None of you weren't alive, possibly. There's some the late 90s. These are called bubble worlds. These three-dimensional spherical worlds you could look from inside. Okay, but so now we can use these to produce three-dimensional data sets. So the little blue dots are showing where the spherical panorama was created. So you go in, take a photograph, get a 3D view of this room, move over here, take another three-dimensional photograph, this spherical panorama, and produce a 3D model of this whole building. Why, if I wanted to make a 3D model of this building, this room, using this method, why do I have to move around? Why can't I just be here and take one photograph in order to get a three-dimensional model of this building? There are two reasons. There's a big white reason there. Okay, so the first reason is if I'm over here, I can't record the other side of the room because of occlusion. Right? There's a big thing in the way that stops me being able to see the other side. So that's one reason. The second reason is that this method, photogrammetry, remember, is based on the fact that the light stays the same but the camera moves. Yep? Okay. Because we have to be able to compare. We're either changing the light with the camera fixed, so we're comparing how the surface of the light changes, or the lighting is fixed and we're changing the how the object looks when viewed from different directions. Remember a couple of weeks ago I made you look at the screen and close your left and your right eyes? Yeah? Okay, there we go. Back to that. All right, another key element of part of this process, very relevant to your assignments, is simplification or decimation. These kinds of methods tend to generate this sort of information, a point cloud. So millions and millions and millions of little points which have sampled a physical object. You've sampled it, you haven't completely captured it, you've just sampled it. And in order to record things like the edges, you need to capture an awful lot of points. In order to record these bits, you don't need very many points. But most of these methods are not able to distinguish where they need to capture loads of data and where they don't. So what you end up with is a point cloud with loads and loads and loads of information. Right, so for this object here, you'd have, let's say, 10 million points, right? And you'd need quite a few points to capture this slightly rounded or filleted edge here, but you don't need many points to capture a completely flat surface. Okay, so the computer goes through the simplification process. Generally, it's just this kind of simplification, so producing a triangular mesh where the triangle is bigger or smaller depending on the amount of detail that's needed. It's using really clever methods that try and help the computer or enable the computer to work out the semantics that it's seeing, work out what it is actually seeing. So in this case, the computer understands this to be a flat surface, and it may even understand it as a wall, kind of flat surface, rather than some other form of flat surface. Okay, so computer vision is much more moving in this direction. So not just simplifying the data, but actually understanding what it is. Okay, so that's another key component. And then this one is also really key, gap filling. So really lovely example. So MashLab is one experiment with this software produced by Roberto Scopino's group at PISA. So this is a pretty rubbish, you wouldn't mind me saying, example of filling the gaps. Okay, so we've got a sculpted hand here with some fingertips missing. Here we've got a version of the gaps filled in, where they've effectively just stuck a bit of flat cardboard on the end. Okay. A neater and more intelligent version is down here. This is the Stanford group working on their digital Michelangelo make set, very famous 3D modelling project. Been happening for longer. And here's the gap. There's a big hole in the data, and here is a hole that's been filled automatically from the computer. So it's blended in because the computer has started to understand, it's been able to extrapolate from the known to the unknown in order to fill the gap. And the software is starting to be better and better at being able to do that. Gap filling is absolutely vital, particularly if you're going to 3D print something. Because 3D printing requires you to have what's called a watertight mesh. It requires you to have a closed representation of an object. Yeah, it's like if we're going to be 3D printing. Oh, I thought that would move more. We're going to be 3D printing the mouse. Yeah, if we're capturing the 3D version of this mouse, and then we try and 3D print it, if we've missed off the back, it doesn't have enough data in order to produce it. Imagine that this whole process, the photogrammetry, is about producing a mold into which you're pouring something. Yeah, you're pouring some kind of plastic palette, make your own object, or a chocolate, whatever you choose. Okay? If you've only produced this version, the front side, and not the back, then all the chocolate, all the plastic Paris washes out of that. It can't produce the mold. You have to have a watertight, closed version in order that you can produce the three-dimensional replica. So the two solutions to that, one of them is making sure you photograph from lots of different angles. Yeah. So that you don't have the problem with the massive column in the middle. And the second method is to use gap filling to fill the gaps where you have made little errors. Okay, because you can imagine just down in here, you're going to have to take an awful lot of photographs, yeah, to fill the gaps between the toes. Yeah, because the camera is going to have to see the every different direction. So inevitably you do have to use some of this gap filling to a certain extent. Another solution, this is another great example, is bringing together lots of different data sets. Yeah? So returning to my scarf, if we want to be able to relight this in order to sell it on eBay, and we need to be able to change the lighting position, see how it would look in the sunshine, then we need 3D data. We use photogrammetry to capture the 3D data. We need the surface data, so we use photometric stereo, the examples I'd introduced at the beginning, in order to capture that. What we'd probably also do is capture this environment with a spherical photograph so that we understand where the light was when we actually recorded the real object. We glue all that together. Data fusion is just a posh way of saying glue all the data together. We bring it together and we have an understanding of the object which is much better than the sum of all of its parts. We can start to add even more detail onto this. All right, so with our scarf again, we've captured the three-dimensional properties, we've captured the subtle surface. If we want this particular detail to be rendered in very accurate colour, let's say, then we can take specific photographs under very high resolution, which can then be mapped, wrapped around that three-dimensional object. So pelt mapping is a particularly kind of disconcerting example. I think this is from the 3ds Max manual on how to do pelt mapping. It's kind of called pelt mapping because it's a bit like when you would spin an animal in order to create this equation out of it. I'm mostly vegetarian, so it's kind of, not one for me. But what you've got is this is a flat version of the person's face that can then be wrapped around a 3D model of them and make it appear as if they are more human than we have here. So we've got 3D, big 3D stuff, photogrammetry, tiny detailed stuff, photometric stereo, surface properties like colour, those little fine details captured using photographs, and then pelt mapped, reprojected onto those objects. Some nice examples of this all coming together. So this is again the digital Michelangelo project, where you have this quite low resolution three-dimensional data, but because of the high quality photographic data that was pelt mapped and mapped onto this object, you can't tell. So it looks as if you've captured the whole object in enormous, infinite detail, but actually the data that's being looked at by the phone or the computer is much smaller. Right? This is used in game engines as a way of optimizing the delivery of these things. Okay. And then we've got some other kind of methods that enable, to support the capture of these things. This is a really lovely paper about how you can remove the highlights that are caused by taking photographs of shadowed objects or taking photographs of shiny objects. Okay, so those are all the photographic methods. Just quickly, another very common used one is laser scanning. So laser scanning in order to produce these kinds of data sets. So rather than using a camera, it's using a sensor which detects the time, either the time it takes for a laser pulse to leave the instrument, bounce back off the surface of the object and return, or it measures the angle between the emission of the laser light and the angle of the light that's bounced back off the surface of the object. So those are the two, there are kind of refinements, but those are the two primary methods that are used. And there's some nice methods in order to capture these. Extremely expensive. So this is a Faro scan arm. So I've told you previously about Damien Hirst, the Damien Hirst project. Some of the data that inspired that was captured by my colleague who used a Faro scan to record bits of wood. So this little thing here is a laser scanner or it's a touch sensitive scanner, and the whole arm is able very, very accurately to record the position of the scanner, which in turn means that you can record objects down to a resolution of perhaps 1/100 of a millimetre. So very, very high resolution. We've got a lower resolution version, so the Faro Freestyle. So that one, you have it plugged into the computer, but you can use it to scan an object. And then another one, a really nice example, so the Z Revo, which uses a method called Geoslam, where this is like a paintbrush, and you can wander around with this thing. It rotates. There's videos. I'm trying to show you the video, but there are videos of it in operation. So you carry this paintbrush around and put it under the table, and you put it into the corners behind here, and it will generate interactively a 3D model of the whole room for you. Being used by, for example, estate agents to sell very fancy houses. So producing interactive 3D models of the inside of these objects. And then we did a kind of slightly cheaper version using a Microsoft Connect, to do the same thing. Again, there's examples of this. You can see Connect Fusion on the web. Okay. Yeah, last method. We'll run out of time. So I've gone through surface capture using photogrammetry, very subtle surface detail using photometric stereo, photography, laser scanning. Last one is computed tomography, which is an X-ray technique that allows you to see inside objects. This is an object that we want to see inside. This is a laser scan at the outside of a little pot, which is a couple of thousand years old, and this is the inside of that pot. Okay, so this is the view of that pot using the computed tomography data, and X-ray data, X-ray three-dimensional data that we gathered. And then by processing those data, we were able to produce these, which are images of how the coins on the inside of that pot would look. So here are those coins that have been automatically extracted by the computer. So we said, look at these data, look at the original data, and automatically find the coins. And these are the results that come about. So these are the coins that the computer found for itself. And here is a comparison between the 3D computed tomography data and the real coin when we cleaned up the pot afterwards. Right, so this is completely three-dimensional with the object still full of soil, and this is what the real object looks. It's not perfect, but it was good enough in order to generate 3D prints of those objects so that we could touch the digital thing without having to remove the real coins from the block of soil that we were interested in. Okay, so that's the whole suite of methods I'd like you to be aware of. Right? The key takeaways: photogrammetry, big objects, coarse detail, yeah. Photometric stereo, flat objects, subtle detail. Photography mapped onto it, adding different levels of information, perhaps the particular colour information. And if you're lucky enough to have access to a machine to generate it, if you want to see inside or capture the true 3D volumes of something, then use computed tomography. Right, we have a couple more minutes just to finish. Alright, so those are the three methods. Make sure you understand what those methods can produce. That's all you need for the purposes of your installation. Just to finish on what you can then do afterwards, these are kind of the mechanisms for taking what has been produced using these digital methods and converting it into physical things. We talked about CNC when we visited Makerversity. So that would be taking the photogrammetric data and milling, so cutting this shape out of a piece of wood or out of a piece of stone or plaster, whatever. We have the ability through different methods for adding material in order to create a version. So obviously we could automatically mix this object, but we can 3D print it as well by adding and adding successive layers. The key takeaway from this is that the materials that we can do these in are rapidly changing and expanding. So we've already seen edible things, like Makerversity talked about chocolate. It's now possible to print in glass, and it's also possible to print in hybrid materials that combine things like wood with metal wires with computer components in order to create composite objects in one go. So we could 3D record our scarf, and then when we 3D print it, or when we knit it, we could combine not just the fabric, but also elements that enable this to be a smart fabric of some kind or another. A fabric that lights up, a fabric that can tell how it's being bent and manipulated. And we'll learn more about those kinds of possibilities when we think about Internet of Things week after next. Okay, that's us for today. It's two seminars as usual today and tomorrow, and you'll have a go doing some of this 3D data capture. Yeah, of course. Yeah, go on tomorrow. That'll be fine. Because he's it won't matter so much about the numbers tomorrow because he's demonstrating something. So that's fine. Yeah, no, that's fine. No problem. No problem.